Hey there guys, so yeah, sorry for the lack of videos recently. I don't really have like an in real life excuse or anything for the lack of videos. To be honest, I've just been pretty jaded with boxing. Um, Sometimes, the corruption in the sport, fixed fights and, bad judging, corrupt referees who are always on the A sides, always protecting the A side and stuff. Sometimes it just turns you off the sport for, a period of time, but I'm planning on making more boxing videos like in the near future. Hopefully I'll get back into making them on a much more consistent basis. And I thought I'd do some quick post-fight reviews for the boxing event that happened in Saudi yesterday, the Day of Reckoning card. So I'm going to cover the three fights which I was most looking forward to on the card. Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin, Daniel Dubois versus Jarrell Miller, and Arslanbek Makhmudov versus Ajit Kabayel. I'm not going to cover Dimitri Bivol versus Lyndon Arthur, Opataya versus Zorro, or Hrgovic versus Mark Demori because, those fights, I expected the result that I expected Bivol to beat Arthur, I expected Opataya to beat Zorro easily, and I expected Hrgovic to knock Mark Demori out in one round. So, there's not really that much to say about those fights as they were just complete mismatches, to be honest. And I'm not going to be talking about Deontay Wilder's fight, even though he got completely schooled by Joseph Parker. I'm planning on making a full video on Deontay Wilder's career, and I want to go a bit more in depth on it then. So hopefully I'll make that in like the next week or so. But I'm just going to be doing a couple of fights today, just a few quick post-fight reviews to get back into this. So starting off with Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin. Going into this fight, me personally, I expected Joshua to do a job on Otto Wallin. I didn't really see what Wallin brought to the table that would give Joshua any sort of problems. Wallin doesn't really have any power compared to most top 20 heavyweights. He's very feather-fisted, and even though Wallin's got solid fundamentals, a lot of people were comparing him to, like, a lot of people were saying that Joshua, he struggles with southpaws, and comparing the Wallin fight to the Usyk fight. I think that's very simplistic. Otto Wallin is very stationary. He's quite flat-footed. He doesn't really move around the ring very often, which is a polar opposite to Usyk, who's always on the move, always very elusive, and that's why he's so hard to pin down. And whereas Usyk's got like elite level boxing skills, I just don't see that with Otto Wallin, to be honest. I don't think he's like a world level heavyweight. Like, his claim to fame is like giving Tyson Fury a hard fight, which I thought Tyson Fury won quite clearly, to be honest. Apart from the cut, I don't think Fury really had. I don't think Wallin really gave him too many problems in that fight. I think Fury won about 9 rounds probably. And I think Otto Wallin's like European level. I just didn't think Otto Wallin really brought anything to the table that would trouble Joshua. And that showed in the fight, with Joshua pretty much winning every round, and getting the stoppage. Otto Wallin's corner pulled him out after the 5th round. I was quite surprised by that. I didn't think the corner would pull him out so early. He did have a bad round 5. He got hurt quite badly with a right, I think it was a right hand left hook combination, which backed him into the ropes. But I thought they'd let him go on. He hadn't taken like a pasting or anything. But I was quite impressed with Joshua's performance. I know Wallin didn't really do anything in the fight. He was just sort of standing there like a punch bag, to be honest. But Joshua did show, that I've heard a lot of people say it was like the Joshua of old, like it was like his aggressive boxer puncher style. And I see that, to be honest. I think they're right to a certain degree. It's not quite the same as he used to be. Like Joshua, like you look at like his fight against Dylan White, for example. constant combinations, constantly on the front foot. That combination puncher, who would throw like 5s and 6s. In this fight, he was mostly throwing like singles. He would throw like a right hand, and then he would lead with like a left hook, and he would throw a right hand down the middle. But it was a lot more impressive than his last two performances, definitely. I thought he looked pretty terrible against Robert Helenius. He really didn't impress me at all. I thought he looked very workmanlike. He didn't really let his hands go at all. He was very negative. And he looked a bit better against Jermaine Franklin, but again, he was a bit negative. He was just boxing from the outside. And he went the distance with Jermaine Franklin, which is a bit disappointing because I don't think Jermaine Franklin would have. I don't think he would have lost at the distance with the Joshua of old. But I think Joshua showed a lot of improvements in this fight. He showed that, he fought this fight as like a boxer puncher, which is his most effective style. Don't get me wrong, Joshua can box. Obviously, if you're an Olympian, you can definitely box. But he's not like an elite boxer or anything. We saw what happened when he tried to box with Usyk. In the first fight, he pretty much got schooled in that fight. Lost 10 rounds. Lost very clearly to Usyk. And I thought in the second Usyk-Joshua fight, Joshua fought a lot more aggressively. He brought in Robert Garcia as his trainer, and he was fighting on the front foot, throwing combinations, working the body. And I thought the second fight was a lot closer. I thought that was like 8-4. I thought that was quite a good performance from Joshua. And yeah, I was quite impressed with him against Wallin last night. Managed to get the stoppage. And yeah, hopefully Joshua can go on and fight someone like Zile Zhang maybe. Or Filip Hrgovic, Daniel Dubois, someone like that. So yeah, I was quite impressed with Joshua last night. And moving on to the next fight, Daniel Dubois versus Jarrell Miller. Going into this fight, I saw a lot of people picking Jarrell Miller. And I believe Jarrell Miller opened as a very big underdog in the fight. He was like, I think the fight started like 6-1 underdog, something like that. Which is quite mad because I think Miller definitely did have a chance in the fight. Like 6-1 is like, pretty much a no-hoper. But I saw this fight as pretty much, I slightly favoured Daniel Dubois to win the fight. I think, I just thought Miller's defense has always been awful. Like he walks into range, just with his hands down. He's very sloppy. He just takes shots on the chin. Sometimes he'll roll them, but he still gets hit. And Miller will do things like where he really leaps in with like a big left hook or something, and then he completely misses, turns him around, and he's just there to be hit. He doesn't even bother putting his hands up to defend himself. He's just there, just to be unloaded on. So I did favour Daniel Dubois just to, just repeatedly tag him, and I did think Daniel Dubois would probably win by stoppage. I didn't expect it to be late, to be honest. I thought Dubois would probably get him out of there fairly early, but obviously Miller showed his granite chin throughout the fight. In the first couple of rounds, Miller was giving Dubois a lot of problems. Miller came out in the first round with like a good high guard. It was probably the best, defensive work that Miller's done in his entire career. Just came forward behind that tight guard. Didn't really take any clean punches in the first round. And from then on in, Miller started really putting the pressure on Dubois in rounds 2, 3, and 4. And Dubois was a bit unorganised, I thought. Miller was really putting that pressure on him. He was putting the physical and mental pressure on him. And Dubois was really having to work hard to keep boxing on the outside, keeping Miller at range, picking him off. And in the fourth round, Miller seemed to hurt Dubois. I thought that was Miller's best round of the fight, the fourth round. It looked like Dubois might have been, hurt by a shot. And to be honest, watching that fourth round, I thought, Miller, he's a bit on top here. He was doing well. He was able to unload on Dubois. He was landing some good clean punches. And it was looking good for him at that time in the fight. He'd probably, maybe he definitely won that round. Maybe he'd won a round before, so he was, level in the fight. But then obviously Jarrell Miller comes out in the 5th round. It looked like he completely punched himself out in the 4th round. And he just came out in the 5th round and he just looked tired. He reduced his output. Dubois was able to pick him off a lot more easily. And the trend continued throughout the rounds, and by rounds 8 and 9, Miller he was wobbling around the ring like the Michelin Man. I mean, he was absolutely exhausted, had nothing left. He was barely even throwing punches, and it was obvious that he was way out of shape, and he probably hadn't had enough time to train for the fight. He was just sort of going through the motions at that point, still trying to win, of course, but just didn't really have anything left in the tank. And in the 10th round, Miller came out, his corner told him go for the knockout, and he came out, quite rejuvenated. I thought he really went for Dubois, and Dubois sort of stood in the middle with him and had a trade-off. But to be honest, Miller just, after around 30 seconds of that round, Miller just gassed again. And it was obviously had nothing left. Towards the end of the fight, Daniel Dubois was able to unload several power punches on Jarrell Miller, hit him with combinations and just get the stoppage in the end. To be fair, I thought, maybe the referee could have let Jarrell Miller go on a bit and see the final bell, but I don't think it would have made much of a difference. Miller won 1 or 2 rounds at best. And he clearly lost. He clearly took more damage. He clearly lost the vast majority of the rounds. And he just didn't look prepared at all for the fight. He just, he clearly didn't have enough time to prepare. He was clearly overweight. All that weight was slowing him down and was making him tired. And to be honest, I think the Miller who fought, someone like Johann Dubois when he was in his prime, I think he would have given Dubois a very good fight. Not necessarily saying he would beat him, but I think that version of Miller would have had a chance of beating Dubois, because that version of Miller had very good stamina, and he didn't really gas in fights, unlike this version. So I thought Daniel Dubois did what he needed to. In the early part of the fight, he didn't really. He did what he needed to. He kept him at range, picked him off from behind his jab, and he threw some good straight punches. And it was quite difficult for him in the first couple of rounds, but after Miller gassed, it was just target practice against a punch bag. The commentators were saying, "Oh, Daniel Dubois has proved he's not a quitter, and he's got heart, and he's shown his bravery and his character." I mean, he didn't really need to show his heart, to be honest. It wasn't exactly a grueling fight. Apart from, like rounds 3 and 4, he was never really seriously put under pressure. And I mean, yeah, you can say in the 4th round when he was hurt, he didn't take a knee, but is that really the only consolation we've got? Being hurt once and not taking a knee, that's like his plaudits. So if Dubois would have been given a really hard fight over the distance and his heart really tested and he didn't quit, then yeah, we could have said, he's shown his mettle in there. But the facts remain. Every time he has been given a really difficult fight, he has quit. And, every time he's been hit with hit with shots like he was against Kevin Lerena, he was taking knees, even when he wasn't getting hit at all. So, question marks still out about Dubois, but he's got something there. I mean, I think he's a bit stiff. I don't think he's got much variety to his game. He's just sort of right hand, left hook, jab. He just sort of does the same thing over and over again. But against a guy like Jarrell Miller, who's completely out of shape and sort of a punching bag, it will work. But if he fights someone like Fury or Joshua or Hrgovic, I don't think he'll have as much success, and I don't think he'll really be able to beat those guys. Where does Jarrell Miller go? I mean, I like Jarrell Miller, to be honest. I think he had something different to the heavyweight division. And I think if he is going to come back, he definitely needs to get himself into better shape. cut his weight down, to like 300-pound mark probably, and just train for a couple of months first, and then get into a fight, a comeback fight, and then get a fight against someone decent, like maybe Dylan White. That'll be a good fight. Both, been caught numerous times for PEDs, so I don't see why not. Yeah, and moving on to the next fight, Ossenbeck Makhmudov versus Ajit Kabayel. This one surprised me. I was expecting Makhmudov to get the win. I didn't think it was like a foregone conclusion. Ajit Kabayel has shown his talents before. He's shown he's got something there when he beat Derek Chisora a couple of years ago. And I thought he quite clearly beat Derek Chisora. I thought he won, 9 rounds to 3. But since then, he hasn't really fought anyone of note, and that's a problem. Like, he's just been defending the European title. And he's been quite inactive as well, like fighting once a year. The best opponent he's probably beaten since the Chisora fight was like Andrei Rudenko or someone like that. And to be honest, in his last fight against Smakichi, he got dropped in that fight, and he didn't look very good. It was like a war with a guy who had never really beaten anyone, and wasn't that good. So I think there were a lot of questions about Kabayel going into the fight. Makhmudov was someone who I've never thought he's like the next coming of like a heavyweight champion or anything, but I thought he was a pretty good fighter. He hasn't really fought anyone, to be honest. Like he's had a lot of like first round knockouts against the likes of like that guy he fought last time, like Junior Wright or whatever his name was. And he's fought like washed up guys like Sam Peter and Erkan Tepper and guys like that who he's just blown out in one round. Just awful fights. And the only guy of some note who gave him rounds was Carlos Takam. And to be honest, he struggled to win that fight. Takam gave him a really hard fight. Arguably won 4 or 5 rounds. But he was dropped twice in the process, so he lost the decision. So it was quite a close one going into the fight on who to pick. I thought Makhmudov would win. But I think both guys had it to prove. Makhmudov could have beaten Kabayel, who's like a prime contender, and the same for Kabayel, just prove he still got it after the Chisora fight, which was years ago. And in the first round I thought Makhmudov won it. Kabayel was boxing on the back foot quite well. He was able to land some clean punches, but I thought Makhmudov, he pressed the action. He landed some good shots on his himself. And I also thought he won the second round, pretty much the same thing, to be honest. In the third round, though, it completely changed with Kabayel able to piece him up from the outside. Makhmudov's defense has never been that good. I mean, Carlos Takam was able to unload with like overhand rights on him. He was able to catch him clean like numerous times with that shot. And Makhmudov doesn't really adapt to the shots he's getting hit with. He just tends to get hit with the same shots over and over. He doesn't really change his strategies or anything to avoid that shot next time. He just sort of ends up getting hit with that shot over and over. Kabayel was able to piece him up with like right hands from the outside. He was able to get inside on him, land good punches to the body, land some uppercuts. And yeah, in the fourth round, Ajit Kabayel stopped him. He was able to drop him with body punches a couple of times. He dropped him 3 times in that round. And I was quite surprised by that. I don't think many people expected Kabayel to stop Makhmudov. I think a Kabayel points win was definitely a possibility. But I didn't expect a stoppage. But I suppose it shows that Makhmudov has been sort of protected in his career. He's never really been put in with anyone who is a puncher. He's never really been put in with anyone who, is a serious risk. I mean, he was put in against a 40-something-year-old Carlos Takam, but I don't think that's really classifies as a risk. And yeah, in Makhmudov's first sort of step-up fight where he fights someone, a live opponent, he lost. So I don't really know where he goes from here. I think Makhmudov's a bit stiff. I think his defense is quite poor. I don't think his skills are very good, to be honest. I think he's a bit one-dimensional. If his style of coming forward and unloading doesn't work, he doesn't really have anything else to fall back on. and it showed when Kabayel was able to piece him up in the third and fourth rounds. Makhmudov was just sort of swinging. He didn't really know what to do. He didn't really have anything to fall back on. He was just sort of spraying and praying, hoping one of his wild shots hit Kabayel and managed to hurt him or knock him out. But yeah, the writing was on the wall, to be honest. And yeah, I was quite impressed with Kabayel's performance. Where does he go from here? I don't know. Maybe he could fight, Daniel Dubois. Maybe he could fight someone like Filip Hrgovic. Maybe he could fight Wallin. So some good fights out there for him. He definitely proved he's got something to offer in the heavyweight division after so long of fighting, nobodies. So yeah, I thought there were some good fights on that card. I thought the Dubois Miller fight was very good. I thought the Makhmudov Kabayel fight was good. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say about this. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, hopefully I'll be making some more videos in the near future, and hopefully I'll be a bit more active on this channel now. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and God bless.